Hi, my name is Ethan, and for 6 years I believed I was a happily married man. My wife, Jessica, and I were the couple people pointed to at weddings or dinner parties, whispering that we were the picture of love, loyalty, and stability. I thought of her as my partner, my confidant, the person I would grow old with. For the longest time, there was no question in my mind that what we had was solid, unshakable. But life has a way of pulling the rug out from under you when you least expect it, and sometimes the person standing closest is the one holding the corner. It was on a Friday evening that the first crack in the illusion appeared. Jessica had just received a promotion at work. A well-deserved one, I thought. She had always been ambitious, sharp, and admired by her colleagues. To celebrate, she suggested we invite some friends and head to a trendy bar downtown. I agreed, proud of her accomplishment and eager to share in her joy. What I didn't realize was that this night would mark the beginning of the end, though at the time it seemed harmless. The night began like many others. Laughter filled the air, glasses clinked, and stories of office politics and shared memories floated around the table. But Jessica seemed different. Her laughter was a little too loud, her smile a little too bright, and her attention not on me but on her phone, which she checked constantly as if the world inside its screen was more captivating than the people seated beside her. I brushed it off, telling myself she was simply excited, basking in the glow of her achievement. Still, something deep in my gut stirred. It was when she leaned close to her coworker, Matt, that the unease sharpened into something more tangible. He was a tall, confident man, someone I had met once or twice at office functions, never giving him much thought. That night, however, the way Jessica's eyes lingered on him, the way her hand brushed his arm casually, almost instinctively, it spoke of familiarity that went beyond professional camaraderie. Then came the toast. Jessica rose from her seat, glass in hand, commanding the attention of everyone. Her words began sweetly enough, full of gratitude for the support she had received from friends, family, and me. Then she turned to Matt with a smile that lingered longer than it should have, thanking him for making long hours so much more enjoyable. The room fell quiet for a second, eyes darting to me, waiting for my reaction. I laughed, though inside I felt a knot tighten in my chest. What followed was worse. She joked lightly about me being boring sometimes, adding that Matt always knew how to keep things fun. The laughter of friends stung like daggers. It was in that moment I felt something shift irrevocably inside me. I excused myself, retreating to the restroom, staring into the mirror as if searching for answers in my reflection. My thoughts tumbled chaotically. Was I imagining things? Or was there something very real slipping through the cracks of my marriage? When I returned, Jessica and Matt were gone. My friends avoided my gaze, their awkward silence more telling than words. Eventually, Jessica came back alone, brushing off my question with a casual explanation about showing him the coat check. The lie was flimsy, but I swallowed it, not wanting to cause a scene. The rest of the night was a blur of forced laughter and empty sips of my drink. I felt like a stranger in my own marriage, watching her sparkle for others while I faded into the background. When we got home, she went straight to bed, offering no acknowledgement of what had transpired. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every glance, every word. Something had shifted. I couldn't deny it anymore, but I told myself not to jump to conclusions. After all, suspicion is a dangerous thing. It can warp perceptions and twist innocent actions into sinister shapes. And yet, deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The Friday night bar celebration serves as the initial catalyst for Ethan's suspicions, transforming a seemingly joyful event into a moment of emotional dissonance through Jessica's flirtatious behavior and public jabs. This scene highlights the theme of denial in relationships, where subtle cues like lingering glances and forced laughter signal deeper issues that Ethan begins to internalize. It marks Ethan's shift from blind trust to budding awareness, setting the narrative's tone of gradual unraveling. The weekend that followed was filled with uneasy silence, punctuated by Jessica's forced cheerfulness. She flitted around the house humming to herself, asking if I was okay, repeating the phrase, "You know I love you, right?" in a tone that sounded more like deflection than reassurance. The more she smiled, the more unsettled I became. Her phone became an extension of her hand, her eyes lighting up at messages she quickly hid from view. I asked lightly who kept her so entertained, to which she replied, "Just work stuff." I wanted to believe her, but the nagging sense of betrayal gnawed at me. On Sunday, she announced she was going to a work brunch. Normally, I wouldn't have questioned it. Her career often demanded networking and long hours, and I had always supported her ambition. But after Friday night, doubt had taken root. She dressed more elegantly than the occasion seemed to require, a dress that clung to her in ways that felt meant for someone's gaze. As soon as she left, my anxiety became unbearable. For the first time in my life, I broke a sacred boundary. I opened her laptop, which sat unattended on the counter. She hadn't logged out of her email. My hands trembled as I clicked, ashamed of my actions but desperate for clarity. What I found was subtle but telling. Dozens of messages with Matt, most innocuous, some professional. But one subject line caught my eye. "Last night was amazing." My heart pounded as I opened it. The content was nothing explicit, just photos from a team dinner. Yet in one, Jessica and Matt stood too close, his hand resting on her back, their smiles charged with something unspoken. I told myself it could still be innocent, but the seed of doubt had sprouted into something undeniable. Later that evening, as Jessica showered, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I stared at it, torn between my principles and my desperation. Finally, I picked it up. A message from Matt lit the screen. "Brunch was perfect. Can't stop thinking about last week. See you tomorrow." My world tilted. Last week? What had happened last week? I scrolled through their thread, finding inside jokes, compliments, and then his comment on her dress that very morning. "This dress should be illegal." I set the phone down, my hands shaking, my mind unraveling. The truth was becoming harder to ignore, yet I held back. Confrontation now would only give her a chance to spin it, to twist the narrative until I doubted my own sanity. No, I told myself, I needed to be strategic, patient, calculated. That night, as she climbed into bed smiling, I smiled back. But inside, I was quietly preparing for war. Ethan's invasion of Jessica's privacy by checking her laptop and phone represents a critical breach of trust boundaries, driven by escalating doubt and marking his transition from passive observer to active investigator. This event underscores the moral conflict of suspicion, where the pursuit of truth justifies ethical compromises in Ethan's mind, amplifying themes of self-doubt and strategic restraint. It deepens the narrative's exploration of how partial evidence fuels paranoia while delaying confrontation for calculated advantage. The days after the so-called work brunch stretched into a haze of unease. I lived in a house where every small action became suspicious. Her sudden bursts of laughter at her phone, her longer-than-usual evenings at the office, her distracted look when I tried to tell her about my day. Each detail added up into a mosaic I was terrified to complete. But deep down, I already knew. I started watching, not accusing, not confronting, just recording, noticing. I saw how she no longer left her phone lying around. If once it would rest on the counter or the couch, now it was always in her hand, in her pocket, or face down on the table. She even took it with her into the bathroom. The paranoia of someone hiding too much was clear, and my resolve to uncover the truth only hardened. Nights were the hardest. I would lie awake beside her, listening to her steady breathing, staring at the ceiling. My mind replayed that night at the bar, the toast, the messages I'd glimpsed. I felt my trust turning into ash. Yet, in its place, something else grew. A cold determination not to let myself be made a fool of. A few days later, I called my old friend Tyler. He worked in IT, brilliant with systems, and the sort of man who could dig up the things people thought they'd erased. For the first time in my life, I found myself asking a friend to investigate my own wife. The shame was sharp, but the need for answers was sharper. Life at home became a stage play. We ate breakfast together, exchanged polite questions, even laughed sometimes out of habit. But every interaction was undercut by tension. She seemed almost more affectionate than usual, touching my hand, kissing my cheek, smiling sweetly, as if she sensed the distance she had created and wanted to plaster over it with shallow gestures. What unsettled me most was her calmness. She looked me in the eyes and smiled as if she had nothing to hide. Was she truly that guiltless? Or had she simply mastered the art of deception? At work, I was unfocused, drifting through tasks with half my mind lost in speculation. Colleagues noticed, but I brushed them off. How could I tell anyone that my marriage, the foundation of my life, had turned into a battlefield? That my opponent was the very person I once vowed to trust above all? Every late return home was now an alarm bell. I recorded the times, noted the smell of her perfume, the disheveled strands of hair. I became an archivist of betrayal, cataloging small signs as if preparing a case for trial. One evening she came home cheerful, carrying takeout. We ate quietly, her phone lighting up on the table every few minutes. She thought I didn't notice the way she glanced down with that subtle sparkle in her eyes. A sparkle I hadn't seen directed at me in months. That glow belonged to someone else. It was in that moment I realized I was no longer living in a marriage. I was living in the shadow of one. The question was not if she was unfaithful. The question was when I would finally gather the courage to tear down the illusion. Enlisting Tyler's help to recover deleted messages signifies Ethan's escalation from personal observation to external validation, transforming his internal turmoil into a structured investigation. This development emphasizes the role of technology in uncovering hidden truths, while highlighting Ethan's growing emotional detachment and strategic mindset amid domestic pretense. It illustrates the narrative's theme of isolation, as Ethan internalizes his pain without confiding in colleagues, reinforcing his solitary journey toward confrontation. Tyler called one evening while I sat parked outside my office. I almost didn't want to answer, but I did. His tone was grave. "Ethan, you'd better sit down." He told me everything. Recovered emails, old deleted messages, entire conversations she had thought erased. What began as casual flirtation and late-night complaints about work had blossomed into something undeniable. Emotional intimacy that spilled into physical betrayal. Tyler's voice carried sympathy, but each detail landed like a blade. The phrases he read cut into me. "You understand me in ways Ethan never has. I've never felt so alive." And then, the ones that left no room for doubt. Hotel bookings under her name, dinner photos with him at her side, his hand on her thigh. One discovery struck me harder than the rest. In her work calendar, nestled between meetings and deadlines, was a simple note: "Night at Matt's." Just like that. Scheduled. Ordinary. She had slotted her infidelity into her planner like a routine appointment. That same night, she had told me she was working late. I'd even offered to bring her food, and she declined, laughing softly. "I'm too busy, love." The memory twisted like a knife. I sat in my car after Tyler hung up, unable to breathe. The betrayal wasn't just that she cheated. It was the ease with which she had done it, the nonchalance. She had rewritten the story of our marriage without hesitation, turning me into a placeholder while giving her heart, body, and soul to another man. When I finally drove home, she greeted me with her usual smile, kissed my cheek, asked about my day. I looked at her and felt nothing familiar. She was a stranger wearing my wife's face. But I stayed calm. Losing control would only give her room to twist the truth. I began preparing quietly, collecting documents, saving screenshots, storing messages and photographs. I contacted a lawyer, Liza, a sharp woman who looked through the evidence with cool efficiency. "This is more than enough," she said. Her professionalism steadied me. There was no shock in her voice, no pity, only clarity. My case was ironclad. I nodded, feeling something I hadn't in weeks: relief. Not peace, not yet, but a grim sense of clarity. The next day, I asked Tyler to track her again. That evening, his data led me to a small house in a quiet neighborhood. I parked at a distance. Her car was there, right beside Matt's. I waited, heart pounding, though no longer in anguish, only in cold anticipation. An hour later, they emerged together. She laughed at something he said. Her hair tousled, her hand resting on his shoulder with the ease of long practice. I raised my phone and took photos. I didn't shout, didn't storm across the street. I stayed in my car, documenting the truth. Later, I drove straight to Liza's office. She reviewed the photos, the messages, the calendar entries. "These seals it," she said. I saw in her eyes not judgment but respect for the composure I'd managed to hold. That night, when I returned home, Jessica acted as though nothing were wrong. She cooked dinner, told me about her day, even touched my hand gently. I smiled back, matching her play. But inside, something was different. I was no longer her husband. I was her witness. I was her judge. And soon, she would face the verdict of the truth she had so carefully buried. Tyler's revelation of recovered messages and the subsequent tracking leading to photographic evidence culminate Ethan's investigative phase, providing irrefutable proof that shifts his emotional state from grief to empowered detachment. This key moment explores the psychological impact of betrayal's details, such as the calendar entry, which dehumanizes the infidelity and underscores themes of nonchalance in deception. Ethan's consultation with Liza and maintained composure signify his evolution into a strategic actor, earning professional respect while preparing for inevitable confrontation. The moment of reckoning arrived quietly, without fireworks or shouting. It came on a gray Wednesday evening when I realized I had gathered enough evidence and had reached a point of unshakable certainty. My lawyer had reviewed everything, my friend had helped me dig into the truth, and my own instincts, once doubted, were now painfully sharp. There was no longer room for denial. The facade had cracked beyond repair. When I returned home that day, I found her in her usual place, comfortably seated on the couch, her attention absorbed by the small glowing screen in her hand. The way her lips curved into a private smile told me all I needed to know about where her mind and heart were. Watching her from the doorway, I felt a strange sense of detachment, as though I were observing a stranger. I placed the folder of evidence on the table, not as a weapon but as a mirror. Inside it lay the undeniable proof of what she had done. Screenshots of texts, copies of emails, hotel receipts, and photos that spoke a language more powerful than words. When she finally noticed me and looked up, I no longer saw the woman I had once trusted. I saw only the weight of her deception reflected in her eyes. Her face betrayed the shift immediately. Color drained from her cheeks, her posture stiffened, and her hands fumbled with the phone she had been clutching. The evidence was a silent accuser, and her reaction confirmed everything I already knew. For a fleeting moment she attempted to summon composure, but the tremor in her breath gave her away. Tears soon followed, cascading down a face that had once been my comfort, but was now the mask of betrayal. The sobs filled the room, but they did not move me. They were no longer a reflection of remorse. They were the cries of someone caught, exposed, stripped of the illusion she had worked so hard to maintain. In that heavy silence, I felt something inside me shift. There was no anger left, only clarity. I realized that there was nothing left to salvage, nothing to repair. She had already burned the foundation of our marriage, and I was standing amid the ashes, unwilling to rebuild. That night, I slept in the guest room. She wept behind closed doors, but I felt no urge to comfort her. Grief had already done its work on me in the weeks leading up to this moment. What remained was a calm acceptance that the life we had built together had ended long before the confrontation. The marriage, once thought unshakable, was finished, and in that realization, I found the first breath of peace. The quiet confrontation with the folder of evidence represents the narrative's climax, where Ethan's accumulated proof forces Jessica's facade to crumble, evoking her tears and confirming his suspicions without explosive drama. This scene delves into themes of emotional numbness and clarity, as Ethan's detachment signals the death of the marriage and his readiness for separation. It highlights the power of evidence as a nonviolent tool for truth, marking the end of illusion and the beginning of personal liberation. The days after the confrontation unfolded in a haze of paperwork, tense silence, and measured steps towards separation. My lawyer guided me through the legal process, and the evidence I had gathered made the path straightforward. Yet simplicity on paper did not mirror reality within the house. She alternated between desperate pleading and bitter accusations. At times she wept, insisting that she still loved me, that she had simply been lost, lonely, searching for something she claimed I no longer gave her. At other times, she lashed out, rewriting history to cast herself as the victim and me as the negligent partner. Each attempt washed over me like waves against rock. I had already endured the storm, and I no longer swayed. Living under the same roof became unbearable. The air was heavy with unspoken tension, every shared space poisoned by memories of laughter that now seemed fraudulent. The home we had built together became a battlefield of silence and avoidance. I prepared myself each day with a deliberate calmness, reminding myself that losing control would only give her ground to twist the truth. The divorce proceedings moved forward with a slow, grinding inevitability. She tried to delay, to negotiate for sympathy, even to present herself as the injured party. Yet the evidence stood unshakable. The story she spun unraveled under the weight of her own actions. What once would have broken me now left me steady. Each attempt to manipulate only clarified how far she had fallen from the person I thought I knew. The day the papers were finalized, I sat alone in my car outside the courthouse. For a long moment I did not move, simply breathing in the reality of finality. 6 years of shared history were reduced to ink on paper, signatures that severed what had once seemed unbreakable. The grief was real, but beneath it was something stronger: liberation. I moved into a new apartment soon after. It was sparse, quiet, and untainted by deceit. Every wall felt like a blank page, every object a choice of my own. I replaced the bed, the dishes, even curtains, small acts of renewal that symbolized a deeper truth. This was my life, no longer shared with someone who had betrayed its foundation. With time, fragments of normalcy returned. I began running in the mornings, my breath sharp in the cool air, each step grounding me in the present. I reconnected with friends, voices of support I had neglected in the fog of my marriage. Slowly, I felt myself emerging from beneath the weight that had held me captive for months. She attempted to reach me once more, sending messages heavy with regret, apologies, and declarations of love. I read them with a detached calm and deleted them without reply. There was no longer anything to salvage, and every word was only another attempt to pull me back into the mire of her self-deception. In the quiet of my new home, I reflected on what had happened. Betrayal had cut me deeply, but it had also forced me to confront truths I had long avoided. It had shown me the fragility of trust, the danger of denial, and the strength that comes from facing pain directly. Her choices had destroyed our marriage, but they had also freed me. They had stripped away illusion and left me standing in the clear, harsh light of reality. And in that light, I discovered something unexpected: resilience. The first time in a long time I felt whole. Scarred, yes, but whole. The betrayal that once consumed me no longer defined me. It had become a chapter closed, a past I carried only as a reminder of what I had overcome. The woman who had betrayed me was left to face her own consequences, while I stepped forward into a life no longer weighed down by deceit. I had walked through fire and emerged intact, not broken but transformed. And in that transformation, I found clarity, strength, and freedom. The finalization of the divorce and Ethan's move to a new apartment symbolized the resolution of the conflict, allowing him to reclaim autonomy through physical and emotional renewal via routines like running and reconnecting with friends. This phase examines themes of resilience and liberation post-betrayal, as Ethan's deletion of Jessica's messages reinforces his boundaries and self-respect. It culminates the story's arc from devastation to empowerment, illustrating how adversity fosters personal growth and closure. Final analysis. This narrative traces Ethan's journey from idealized marital bliss to the painful awakening of betrayal, structured around escalating discoveries and strategic responses that emphasize themes of trust's fragility and the power of evidence in reclaiming control. Through key events like suspicions at the bar, digital investigations, and confrontation, the story critiques deception's emotional toll while celebrating resilience, as Ethan's transformation from victim to empowered individual highlights the potential for personal renewal amid heartbreak. Ultimately, It serves as a cautionary tale on denial's dangers and the liberating force of facing truth, culminating in a message of hope through self-discovery and freedom from illusion.